How many of the products your pet store keeps selling you every month do your fish actually need? Fewer than you think. 15 years behind the counter of my own shop, and I watched the same handful of bottles walk out the door over and over, none of them fixing the thing that was actually wrong. 30 years keeping fish, about half of them running that store, and the pattern never changed. Most of what this hobby sells you is convenience dressed up as necessity. None of these 15 hacks are really secrets. They are just the things that cut into somebody's margin, so nobody at the register is ever in a hurry to bring them up. I have leaned on every one of these across soft water in the Pacific Northwest, hard water out in Colorado, and the middle-of-the-road tap I ran the shop on in Tennessee. And stay with me to the end, because after the 15 there is one more habit that isn't on any list, costs you nothing, and does more for a tank than all 15 of these combined. Start with the one the bottled bacteria companies wish you would forget. If you want a new tank ready for fish in days instead of weeks, you do not need to buy a cycle-starting product at all. You borrow a squeeze of filter media from a tank that is already running. That is a sponge, a pad, or a handful of the little ceramic pieces out of an established filter, about the size of what fits in your palm. The reason this works is simple. Once you know where your bacteria actually live, they are not floating in the water. They coat every surface inside the filter, a whole colony that turns fish waste into something far less toxic. That is the same nitrogen cycle idea I keep coming back to. The bacteria are the whole engine of the tank. When you borrow colonized media, you are transplanting millions of living bacteria straight into the new filter, and they get to work immediately. Yeah, I know the shelf is full of bottles that promise the same thing, and some of them even help. But a friend's used sponge does the same job for free and does it more reliably. In the years I ran the store, the customers who cycled fastest were always the ones who knew somebody with an established tank. Ask a neighbor, ask a club, ask the guy at the shop if he will squeeze a sponge into a baggie for you. Worst case, he says no. Best case, your tank is cycled before the weekend. If you cannot borrow media, cycle the tank with fish food nobody has to die for. A $4 jug of plain household ammonia from the hardware store will cycle a tank from scratch. No fish suffering through it. No cycling product needed. The part the label will not tell you is this. The bacteria you are trying to grow eat ammonia. So you add a little ammonia yourself, keep feeding that colony for a couple weeks, and let it build up before a single fish goes in. Dose it up to around 2 ppm, which is a couple of capfuls in an average tank. Then test every few days and top it back up. When the tank can take that ammonia down to zero and turn the nitrite that follows down to zero within a day, you are cycled. One warning that matters. The ammonia has to be pure, no detergents, no scent, no surfactants. Shake the jug hard. If it foams up, put it back on the shelf. If it stays flat, you are good. And I know the old advice was to fill the tank, let it sit 3 days, then load it up with hardy starter fish to break it in. That is how you end up with dead mollies and a beginner who thinks he has a black thumb. Skip the starter fish. The ammonia does the same job without the funeral. The filter floss you pay a premium for is quilt batting with a fish printed on the bag. Polyester quilt batting, the polyfill stuffing they sell at any craft or fabric store, is the exact same material as branded filter pads, and it runs about 1/10 of the price per bag. Floss is mechanical filtration, meaning it physically strains the fine gunk out of the water, the tiny particles that make a tank look hazy. It does not care what brand is printed on it. One bag of craft batting will restuff your filter for a year or two. The only thing to check is that it is 100% polyester with nothing added. No fire retardant, no fabric softener, no scent. My old supplier from the store days used to laugh about this one because he sold both, the cheap bulk poly and the Aquarium branded version, out of what he swore were the same warehouses. Same fluff, different sticker, different price. That same trick works for your biomedia too, the part of the filter where the bacteria actually set up shop. The hobby sells little ceramic rings and fancy sintered blocks for real money, all of it marketed on surface area, because the more surface, the more bacteria you can house. Lava rock does the same thing for pennies a pound. So do plain plastic pot scrubbers, the ones in the kitchen aisle. Both give the bacteria endless nooks to colonize, which is the entire job. One hard rule, and I learned this the annoying way. The pot scrubbers have to be plain plastic, no metal, no galvanized coating, nothing shiny woven in. Metal leaches into the water, and can poison invertebrates and stress fish. Rinse lava rock hard before it goes in too, because it comes dusty, and it will cloud your water for a day. My old mentor, the guy who taught me this whole trade, had a saying: "You are not keeping fish, you are keeping water." Biomedia is where that water gets kept clean, and the bacteria could not care less whether their real estate cost you $40 or $4. This is where I am going to pick a fight with every unboxing channel that ever reviewed a $300 canister. For most tanks, a sponge filter and a cheap air pump will outperform the expensive gear, and it is the least glamorous thing in the store. A sponge filter is just a block of foam that water gets pulled through by a stream of air bubbles. That foam becomes a giant bacteria colony and a mechanical filter at the same time, and the gentle flow will not shred baby fish or stress a betta. Ask any serious breeder what is running on their racks of tanks. It is almost never canisters. It is sponge filters and air, because they are cheap, nearly impossible to break, and they never suck a baby fish into an impeller. I run canisters on my big display tanks because I like the look of no equipment inside the glass. But if you told me I could only keep one type of filter for the rest of my life, I would take a sponge and an air pump and not think twice. A lot of us quietly run exactly that at home, and not as a beginner compromise. You can grow a nitrate remover on top of your tank for the price of a houseplant. A pothos, or a peace lily, the common vines you see in every office lobby, will sit on the back rim of the tank with its roots hanging in the water and its leaves out in the air. Those roots pull nitrate straight out of the water as fertilizer. Nitrate is the end product of the whole waste cycle, the stuff that quietly climbs between water changes and stresses fish when it gets high. A fast-growing pothos will not replace your water changes, I want to be honest about that, but it will slow the climb and stretch out the time between them. It also looks nice, and it is doing for free what the plant fertilizer aisle wants to sell you. Keep the leaves out of the water so they do not rot, and let the roots do their thing. On a lightly stocked tank in my fish room, a big pothos knocked my between-change nitrate creep down noticeably. Sample of one tank, not a study, but it lines up with what a lot of keepers see. The most common fish disease in the whole hobby, you can cure by turning a dial instead of buying a bottle. Ick, those little white spots that look like grains of salt stuck to a fish, is a parasite, and its weak spot is heat. Raise the tank temperature to around 86 degrees. Warm enough that the glass feels like a hot bath on the back of your hand, and hold it there for 2 full weeks. The heat speeds up the parasite's life cycle so fast that it burns through the only stage where it is exposed and vulnerable, and it cannot complete the cycle to reinfect. One thing you must do alongside it, because it matters. Warm water holds less oxygen, so add an air stone or drop the water line to get the surface moving, or you will fix the ick and suffocate the fish. Raise the temperature slowly over a day, not all at once. This is free, it works, and it does not dump harsh copper into a tank full of plants and shrimp the way the medications do. If this is helping, go ahead and subscribe. We have got more of these coming. And this is the right spot to say where the do-it-yourself line actually is. Heat handles ick. It does not handle everything. If your fish are covered in fuzzy cotton growth, or their fins are visibly rotting away fast, or they are bloated up and floating sideways, you are past the point where a temperature change fixes it, and you are into real quarantine and medication territory. Dosing the wrong treatment into your main tank can wipe out that bacteria colony you worked to grow and leave you worse off than the disease did. That is a slow down, set up a hospital tank, and read carefully moment, not a panic and dump a bottle moment. Know the difference between the everyday stuff you can handle and the outbreak that needs real care. Stop buying algae wafers for your bottom feeders and raise them on vegetables from your own fridge. Plecos, shrimp, snails, most of the algae eaters people keep, will happily demolish a slice of blanched zucchini, cucumber, or spinach. Blanch just means dunk it in boiling water for a minute or two so it sinks and softens. Weigh it down with a fork or a stainless clip, drop it in at night, and pull whatever is left the next morning so it does not foul the water. A single zucchini feeds a tank of shrimp for a week, and costs less than 1 tube of the wafers. My wife has walked into the kitchen more than once to find me boiling vegetables at 10 at night for animals that are technically my responsibility, and she has stopped asking questions. It is cheaper, they love it, and it is real food instead of a compressed puck of who knows what. You are probably paying for water tests and adjustment bottles when the answers are already sitting in a free document with your name on it. Every city that runs a water system publishes an annual water quality report, and it lists your tap water's hardness, its pH, and whether they treat it with chlorine or chloramine. Those hardness numbers, the GH and KH, which are your general hardness and your carbonate hardness or buffer, tell you almost everything about which fish will thrive straight out of your tap and which ones will fight you. Read that report once, and you will know whether you have soft water like a lot of the Pacific Northwest, where you may need to add minerals, or hard water like a lot of the Southwest, where certain soft water fish will never be happy without extra work. One thing worth catching in there. If your city uses chloramine instead of plain chlorine, you need a water conditioner that specifically handles chloramine, because the cheap stuff that only neutralizes chlorine leaves ammonia behind. The fish store will happily test your water and read you a number. Your own city already did it for free, and they are not trying to sell you 3 bottles at the end of it. The equipment cleaner and plant dip the hobby sells you is a watered-down version of the bleach already under your sink. Plain, unscented household bleach, mixed roughly 1 part bleach to 10 parts water, will disinfect a net, a used tank, a decoration, or a quarantine setup better than any Aquarium-branded cleaner. It also works as a quick dip to kill pest snails and algae off tough plants, though delicate plants will not survive it, so know your species first. The safety part matters here, because this one you do not freehand. Rinse everything thoroughly afterward, then rinse it again, and treat it with a heavy dose of dechlorinator before it touches fish. Never ever use soap on anything that goes in a tank. Soap residue is death to fish. And never mix bleach with anything containing ammonia, including your dechlorinator or dirty tank water, because that combination makes a toxic gas. Used carefully, a $2 jug of bleach replaces a whole shelf of specialty cleaners. Used carelessly, it kills the tank. Respect it, and it is one of the most useful things you can keep in the fish cabinet. A stuck heater is the single most common way an entire tank dies overnight, and you can prevent it for about $20. An external temperature controller, an Inkbird is the common one, is a little box you plug the heater into and clip a probe inside the tank. You set your temperature on the box, and it cuts power to the heater the moment the water hits that number, no matter what the heater's own broken thermostat thinks it is doing. A stuck heater is not rare. In the years I ran the store, cook tanks were one of the saddest calls I got, and it was almost always an aging heater that jammed on and boiled everything before morning. While we are talking about electricity and water sitting inches apart, do yourself a favor and make sure every cord runs in a drip loop, meaning it hangs down below the outlet, so water drips off the bottom of the loop instead of running into the socket. And get those outlets on a GFCI, which is the outlet with the little test and reset buttons that cuts power if it senses a fault. None of that is optional around a tank. It is the cheapest insurance in the hobby. The reason most people skip water changes is not laziness, it is the bucket, and there is a cheap fix for the bucket. A water changer that hooks to your sink, or a plain garden hose, turns a 30-minute chore of hauling sloshing buckets across the house into about a 5-minute job you barely think about. The Python is the brand name version, but a length of garden hose and a cheap siphon does the same thing. You drain straight to a drain or out a window, refill straight from the tap, and dose your dechlorinator into the tank as it fills. Why does this matter more than it sounds? Water changes are the one thing that actually keeps a tank healthy long-term, diluting the nitrate and the invisible junk that builds up. But people only do the boring maintenance that is easy. Make it a 5-minute job instead of a back-breaking one, and suddenly you actually do it every week, and the whole tank changes. I resisted this for years out of pure stubbornness and hauled buckets like a chump. The day I finally ran a hose to the tank, my water got measurably better, because I stopped putting the changes off. That tub of aquarium salt the store told you to add with every water change is, for most tanks, a product built on a myth. Somewhere along the way, the hobby decided salt was a cure-all tonic, good for everything, add a little every time. For a lot of fish, it does nothing helpful, and for plenty of them, it does actual harm. Scaleless fish like cories and many loaches, and a lot of soft water species, do not tolerate routine salt well, and live plants generally hate it. Salt has real uses, treating certain specific ailments for a limited time, but as a permanent additive dumped in every week, It is mostly a repeat purchase that keeps you coming back to the shelf. I will own this one. For my first few years, I told customers to keep salt in every community tank, because that is what I had been taught. Then I watched it stress the exact fish it was supposed to protect, and I quit recommending it. If your fish came from soft, salt-free water, your tank should probably look like where they came from, not like a marinade. The best way to buy healthy fish is to not buy them the day they show up. Livestock arrives at a shop in shipping bags, stressed, sometimes sick, and the store wants to sell it fresh off the truck before it costs them anything in losses. But a fish that survives its first week in the store's system, past the shipping stress and the initial die-off, is a far better bet to survive in your tank. So ask the shop what day their fish truck comes in, and then come back a week later and buy the ones still healthy and swimming. My old supplier used to tell me the first few days after a shipment were where he lost the weak ones, which is exactly the window the customer is buying in if they grab them immediately. And whatever you do bring home, run it through a quarantine tank for a couple weeks before it meets your main tank, so one sick new fish does not take out everything you already have. One more thing, and it is not optional. If you ever end up with a fish or a plant you cannot keep, never dump it in a creek, a pond, or a storm drain. It is illegal in most states, and it is exactly how invasive species get loose and wreck a waterway. Rehome it, or take it back to a shop. Beat algae with a timer instead of a bottle. Almost every algae problem in a tank comes down to too much light for too long, and the fix costs about $8 and turns a dial. Algae is a plant, and like any plant, it grows on light. Leave your tank light on 10, 12, 14 hours a day, or park the tank where the sun hits it, and you are running an algae farm. Put the light on a cheap outlet timer and cut it back to about 6 or 7 hours a day, less than a single work shift, and you starve the algae without starving your fish, who do not need the light at all. The algicide bottles treat the symptom, and some of them will crash a planted tank or knock out your good bacteria as collateral. A timer treats the cause for the price of a sandwich. Give it 2 or 3 weeks and watch the green retreat on its own. My reef-keeping brother-in-law spends a small fortune chasing algae over in his saltwater tanks. On the freshwater side, most of the time, the honest answer really is just fewer hours of light. Now the one I promised you, the thing that is not on the list and beats everything on it. It is not a product or a trick, and it costs you nothing but a couple of minutes. It is the habit of actually looking at your tank every single day, on purpose. My old mentor, the one who taught me you are keeping water, not fish, did not own half the gadgets I do. What he had was 30 seconds every morning where he really looked. He caught the fish breathing a little fast before it became a disease. He noticed the film on the surface before it starved the water of oxygen. He saw the one fish hanging back from food 2 days before anyone else would have. None of the 15 hacks work if you are not paying attention, and every one of them works better if you are. Think about what that daily look actually saves you. The fish you catch early and treat for pennies, instead of losing the whole tank. The heater you notice creeping warm before it cooks anything. Over the years I ran the store. The customers with thriving tanks were almost never the ones with the most expensive equipment. They were the ones who knew their fish by sight, and noticed the second something was off. That is the forbidden hack nobody can sell you, because there is no margin in telling somebody to just pay attention. It is free, and it is the whole game. None of this was ever really forbidden. It just does not make anybody money, so it does not get shouted from the shelf. Pick 2 or 3 of these and try them this month. Borrow a sponge, plug in a timer, boil a zucchini. Watch what your tank does when you stop reaching for a bottle and start understanding the water. The people whose tanks always look effortless are not hiding a secret product. They just figured this out a while ago, and now so have you.